Well, that was quite a setup, Justin. I don't know if we're going to be able to deliver. I think so, Junior. What do you think?
I think so as well. How you doing, everybody? Nice to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yes, I agree. So Junior and I are going to go a little rogue. We are not doing backgrounds. Let's just show everyone how nicely we've decorated our home, our resident home, since we've all been home for 2 years. But before we kick it off to the millions of adoring fans, Junior, why don't we do some quick introductions? Again, for everyone joining us, thank you. I'm Kevin Geary. I'm a sales director with LG Ads on the East Coast, based in Atlanta, and I work with agencies and brands direct like Junior. So I'm going to turn it over to him to introduce himself and a little bit about how he got to Resident.
Hello, everybody. My name is Junior Reyes, and I handle programmatic, YouTube, and TV here at Resident. We're a portfolio of home brands. I've been with the company for about four years now. Prior to this, my background is primarily in ad tech. I came from previous companies that you might all know, like Drawbridge, Magnetic, Place IQ. But before the big intro to ad tech, I was actually in the engineering side, working at MetLife and the mainframe environment, which is now referred to as cloud computing and the cloud. But yeah, happy to be here and look forward to this conversation.
Cool, thank you. Why don't we start out with a little, I think we've heard this question before, but this is what all adults talk about right now is, what are you excited to be watching, right? What's coming on that you can't wait to see again? And I'm gonna throw a little curveball onto you. What are you reading? Because I haven't heard that yet. So we know we're all watching at home and we're all streaming because that's our job and that's what we do, but what are you watching and what are you reading?
In terms of watching, I just finished watching the show on Netflix called The Witcher because the new season is coming out on December 17th, as well as this other show called The Maid. Highly recommended. It's a very humbling show, very well put together. And then on Hulu, started watching the show called Only Murders in the Building. Also a very exciting show. In terms of reading, I actually do a lot of my reading mainly online. I'm not too big on books, so a lot of different articles. Right now, I'm really trying to get into crypto and trying to understand the market and everything that's going around that. That's been very interesting. Outside of that, I'm also very interested in electric vehicles. So Tesla is one of the things that I follow very religiously and try to understand where's the next move and everything and how they're expanding into different areas they're expanding right now. Yeah.
Cool. No, that's great. And it sounds like you certainly are covering a lot of bases there. So thank you. Why don't we start with a little bit of a deeper dive into Resident Home and talk a little bit about the brands and the product lines for all the people that might not be familiar with all of the brands that you represent and are working on.
Yeah, sure. So Resident Home is, like I said before, it's a portfolio of home brands. We focus primarily on the bedroom, and particularly the mattress. So we have several mattress brands that cater to different consumers' needs, from our core brands like Nectar Sleep and Dream Cloud Sleep to some of our newer brands like Awara Sleep, which is a more sustainable mattress, as well as some of another mattress that we have that focus more on a very niche audience called Level Sleep, which focuses on a mattress designed for people with specific back pain problems and needs of that sort. And then we just recently launched a new brand called Clover Lane, which focuses on some of the accessories of the bedroom, the bathroom, etc. So bed and linen, bath and bath accessories.
Got it. Great. Thank you. So, in doing the research before we spoke, I saw that, your tagline, your company's tagline is making inspiring products people love to coming home to, right? Mm-hmm. But this past year or two, that has changed. People are now home all the time. A lot of us have been lucky enough to spend a lot of time working on our home, improving it. So just curious, how has that changed your approach to marketing strategy, creative messaging? Do you speak to people that work from home differently than you did prior to kind of, this whole COVID situation?
Great question. So in terms of the tagline, that is definitely like our overarching tagline for the the umbrella brand resident, right? Each of the products have different tagline because they cater to different needs, right? So example, like Nectar is the best sleep at the best value. Dream Cloud is more of an elevator. Life begins with the sleep you deserve, and so on and so forth. So for us, in terms of how we have adapted during COVID, the main thing has been just providing more confidence to the consumer. In terms of the messaging and how we put the product in terms of their practicality and what they are able to do in the bedroom, like we haven't really changed much around that, other than provide confidence. How do we do that? We do that by reinforcing the fact that we have one of the longest trials in the mattress industry, right? That is 365 night trials to try our products. You know, in a time like the last year, right? And still where consumers have to really be careful about the product that they're buying, you know, finances are not as stable as they used to be, et cetera. It is important for a company to really stand behind their products and what they're selling. And we stand very strongly behind that by offering a whole year to try the mattress. Because we understand that we have a really good product, but we want to make sure that it is the right product for you. So that's how the messaging has kind of changed. And then as far as like strategy and channels, like we realized even before March 2020, right, when everything started shutting down, that we needed to diversify our marketing mix and be what the consumer is and adapt the messaging, the creative, and the visuals to those platforms, right? So we started accelerating that process throughout all of 2020, and you know, be in most platforms that our consumers are, but with a hyper focus on that personalized message, that personalized structure of how that ad looks and feels, let's say on TikTok versus how it looks on YouTube, right? Like instead of leveraging the same video and just taking it and copy and pasting it across the whole channel, really adapting that format and that video for the specific marketing channels. And then to the last point of it, in terms of the working from home culture that has evolved and honestly accelerated, because I felt like, I guess the way technology has been going, we were ultimately going to get there. I think the pandemic just really accelerated that process. It goes back to the messaging again, right? Is understanding that, you know, you're spending more time at home. It's hard to find that balance between your work and your life because you're home, right? I'm guilty of that myself, where sometimes I'm like, well, I'm home anyway, so let me get some work done, right? It's like, how do you take a step back and unhustle, right? And really focus on your sleep. So we've kind of tailored the messaging in different ways in different platforms to push that message, to show that, number one, you have the confidence behind a product that we strongly stand behind, but number two, it's really important for you to upgrade this product because it's something you haven't thought about for the last 8 years, for example.
Right. And that's a great point. I was just going to ask that question. So, you know, I saw before that the average person in the US buys a mattress, every 6 to 8 years, give or take. And it's one of those things people kind of don't think about, right? Because it's usually under some covers and some sheets. So can you talk a little bit about, given your broad portfolio of products and brands, how do you balance, your marketing messaging for awareness for something or versus retention marketing, and how are you bringing consumers that have bought a mattress into the fold for some of your other more home-based products?
Great question. So personally for me, like awareness is really relative to like where the consumer is and where you want to position yourself as a brand, right? If you think about a product, like you said, right, it's a very long consideration cycle and the one where people are shifting in. Again, the pandemic really accelerated that process because it made people realize how long they've actually had their mattress. So in terms of balancing the kind of awareness versus retention play, right, for us is really focused on the performance side, right? Most people know of Nectar when they are really ready to make a change, right? Versus other brands might focus on like trying to really find that trigger that causes people to even think about their matches. We kind of gone a little bit past that and try to focus on that quiet mess middle when the consumer is already there, and look at all of our marketing platform from that performance line and trying to fine tune that. So in terms of that balancing out, is really thinking about performance first and then brand second, because worst case scenario of performance is that you get brand awareness. And that's how we've been kind of able to build the brand that we have, right? And the growth that we've seen year on year. But overall, again, is really thinking about the messaging of the different platforms. On Facebook, for example, we might focus on a broader audience because the platform itself is less contextual. It's more of a discovery platform. We want to rely heavily on maybe some of the capabilities of the platform to find the right user. A lot has changed because of iOS 14 or the different things, right? But you then got to lean in on your first party data and leverage that to better inform the platform. On the streaming side, some of those issues might not pertain, right? You're focused really on a household. So how do you identify households that could potentially be in market sooner than others? Is leveraging your first party data along with your third party data and also platform capability. We use Roku One View, so leveraging their ACR data to try to understand how other brands are potentially marketing to the household and then adjusting our messaging for those specific tactics and plays that we have. And finding the nice balance between what we consider awareness versus what we consider retention.
Got it. All right. So you brought up the dreaded D word, right? Data. We got to talk about that a little bit, right? Because obviously first party data is important to you. Curious how you're leveraging that, successfully. What are you seeing in terms of test and learn? When does third party data become invaluable too? Because I have to imagine you're building a pretty broad consumer base of people that are looking across your product lines. So curious how you're working across both first and third party data.
Yeah. So in terms of, I guess most of our channels, we always use first party data. It helps us with number one, exclusion and ensuring we really are trying to go after net new users given our product, right? Our product is one that not many people are buying multiple of unless they have a big house or they recently moved, so on and so forth. But first party data definitely helps in ensuring that all of our marketing channels are set up for success from the start. But also it helps inform the messaging, it helps inform the similar audiences that we should go after, as well as the marketing platform that we should be in, right? And when consumer comes into our website, tells us how they heard about us, even from channels that we haven't even been in, right? Because they might have seen another mattress ad in that channel, right? It helps us inform, and we collect all this data and parse it out and then segment it out and then use it into other platforms by leveraging partners like LiveRack. In the sense of right now, for streaming, which is one of our newer channels, the way that first party helps us is into aligning what third party segment should we be going after, right? So running retargeting first, getting that data, then working with our partners, in this case, Roku One View, and trying to understand how do these consumers index versus other third party segment out there. Personally, I really focus on using data from LiveRamp because I've worked with them in the past for a very long time, and I know their process of data hygiene and freshness and how much they put into betting their partners and the data quality. But after that point, it's kind of when I go into saying this is when I need third party data, right? It's to expand that reach beyond what I'm able to do with my first party data that is coming in from all the other channels that are prospecting. And then from there is kind of using the third party data to build quote unquote second party data to then, or fourth party, however you want to call it, but essentially taking that data, right? And how do I make better assumptions from it? So in the case where I could be using a third party segment from Oracle on a market for mattress, right? Are the people that have been exposed to a segment, if I take those users and then retargeting with display ad on my, that's some continuation between the ad that they saw on TV and that ad, how does that affect the performance of a campaign that's purely just targeting that third party segment on a single type of creative format and device format, so on and so forth. And then try to supplement the first party data and learn from that and then figure out how to adjust messaging even more.
Got it. Yeah, it's quite a task. So it sounds like you have it partly figured out, if not all the way figured out. And And there's
trying.
always right. I feel like we're all in that boat together. And there's two sides of data, right? There's data that we start with to go after our target consumer, and then there's data post campaign. So you can talk a little bit about how the data that you're getting from partners is shaping decisions and future campaigns, and as you kind of look towards, as you evaluate 2021 and assume starting to look at campaigns and looking strategy for 2022, where's data working, and probably the better question is where is data not working?
Yes, I mean, honestly, in terms of like where data is not working, I feel like it gets harder is when it comes to linear. Linear TV is one of those channels that to this day is one of the hardest channels to measure, and it's getting better thanks to ACR data getting more advanced and the push on connected TV, right? But oftentimes what I found is that leveraging the data that you're getting from your partners to influence some of your TV buys sometimes is not one-to-one, and that's usually because of consumer behavior. I think somebody in the previous call mentioned it, in that although a consumer might be watching TV, right? They could be watching TV in two different ways. One could be a streaming consumer, the other one could be a linear consumer. But these consumers can have completely different personalities, attributes, so on and so forth, that might make them react differently to this ad, right? In some cases, I have gone the route of using my connected TV data to influence my linear TV data, and I found that the results don't usually match up. So in that case, I found that I would say almost 50%, 60% of the time, the data doesn't really work when those decisions are made based on third-party data. Now, when leveraging my first-party data, that's where I've kind of found success by looking at the viewership data, the traffic that's coming in, and then trying to inform my linear buys. I found better success in that sense. But yeah, in terms of like where data is working, I feel like that is in the streaming space because of the identifier that is used to target people, which is that household ID, right? And it's something that now companies like the traders and Roku and even the OEMs are doing a better job at trying to find this unified ID to be able to get better at household targeting. That is oftentimes independent of some of the issues that are happening in the iOS world to some extent, right? Because ultimately, you still need a really good cross-device graph to be able to tie back to that purchase. And usually people won't be able to purchase from a connected TV ad, but there's ways, which I'll get into later on.
Well, why wait? I mean, let's get into it right now.
All right.
You set the stage. I mean, I'm going to take your lead.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the way that connected TV right now is advancing, especially because of the state of the world right now, right? With more people working from home and being at home, it has advanced the technological capabilities of it, but also from the creative aspect has pushed companies to innovate a bit more, right? So working with companies like Innovators, for example, to design interactive units, right, that could lead someone to react quicker to a CTV ad versus that lag time you typically see with linear TV. This was making, for me personally, the shift of budget more appealing, right? Because it can get easier to read, right? Designing an ad that I can leverage a QR code and or an email or potentially something more interactive that will cause that to trigger an effect on their personal device so they can get to my site quicker is something that for me personally is causing me to think of how do I reinvest those dollars to the channel, right? How do I plan for that? How do I test different methods of creative to get that more immediate response that I'm not potentially getting on linear TV or on other channels, like display, for example. Like in display, right, you have a multitude of different things that can cause and affect the quality of the traffic that you get to your site, right? On streaming, you have an ad that is non-skippable, that has average video completion rate of like 98% plus, right? Someone is very engaged unless obviously they get up. But if you build an ad experience that maintains the consumer engaged and cause them to interact as much as they are with the content that they're watching, you might potentially get a better response, quicker, more immediate. And I feel like data can help you influence the bill and the design of such ad and such strategy. And first party data does that very well.
Got it. Got it. That's great. So you must be excited about some of the kind of new ad formats that we're starting to see across the spectrum, right? Like a couple of players are starting to investigate pause ads, and obviously the OEMs have ads on the TVs before somebody might go into a non-ad environment. So are things like that, things you're starting to look at? How important does that become as, finding that consumer during their journey gets harder and harder? Right? Because, CTV, while growing and great, a lot of it is non-ad supported, right? So how do you find somebody before they're not lost, before they're happily viewing in Netflix or a non-ad environment?
Yeah, so I think for me, I remember point back. So back in 2016, I used to work at a company called Magnetic. And at the time, Magnetic's a company that used to leverage second-party search data, not like search data from Google, but at the time we were trying to figure out how do we tie this search intent to then target someone on CTV, right? And that opened up a whole Pandora box for me in terms of understanding the whole resale market for CTV. It's crazy for display as it is, right? But for CTV, I feel like it has gotten significantly worse, and it's almost getting to the point of how display is. And to me personally, that actually affects the quality of the inventory, how you find these consumers, as well as fraud and trust in that environment, right? So for me, is by simply gaining control of my buys, right? I know a lot of brands, big or small, will try to go with an agency because they assume that that's the easiest route. And sometimes it is, right? If you have a good agency and the agency has good practices, it is. But in other cases, it might not be. And the agency might be buying inventory that's being resold through an SSP, VMPD, and so on and so forth, to the point that now costs are so inflated. But also that's where the blur lines start to happen and sketchy things like that. So for me, to kind of gain the advantage, and this is anything anybody can do, right? Is go and work directly with the OEMs. Try to talk directly with the SSP, trying to understand your supply chain and like optimize your supply chain. But it's hard to do that when you work at an agency, right? And that's for me, it's like where I'd rather bring that in-house and have that internally, so I can have better control of that and avoid some of the nuances around fraud, price inflation because of resellers, and so on and so forth.
So do you feel because of that approach, because you brought everything in-house and are so close to it, that you've been able to mitigate a lot of the concerns that we're now starting to see about fraud and brand safety within CTV?
Yes, to some extent. Because again, from my experience, again, before working here and working on the vendor side, right? It's interesting to see how blindsided some agencies are when trying to buy media on behalf of their clients. Because number one, they have such a large portfolio of clients to deal with, right? And priorities oftentimes are depending on budgets and whatnot, and time and resources, et cetera, which then oftentimes causes them to issue out IOs to vendors, right? And through that, right, is where you get into the uncertainty of where you're actually running, the data that you can collect, the actual understanding of the mechanism of what you're trying to achieve with connected TV or any channel for that matter, right? Whether it be display, whether it be Facebook, so on and so forth, right? So having it in-house, right, I can move much quicker, act faster, and leverage my first-party data, leverage all the additional data that I'm getting from my other marketing channels, but also have a closer relationship with the platform, in this case, like the DSP that I'm buying through, so that I can understand, right, what capabilities do they have implemented that can mitigate some of these fraud concerns, some of these price inflations, right? Or some of these areas where I might not be able to get transparency, right? There's players out there that are trying to make the supply chain more transparent for connected TV, because quite frankly, right now it's not, right? In some cases, you can see information just at the device level. In some cases, you can see it at the app level. But from a program perspective, like you would in a linear TV environment, it's very hard because everybody's reselling so much that you really don't understand how much you're actually paying versus someone else, right? So I feel like that's the advantage.
Got it. And you brought up another hot button word right now, supply chain, right? I feel like everything gets, I'm not going to be able to buy my son an Xbox this year. He probably doesn't need a new one, but I was thinking about it anyway, but I can't find it anywhere. Has supply chain affected your business dramatically? Were you able to get ahead of it? Just curious, anytime we're talking with a company that could be a problem.
Yes, that's a very good question. One thing I would say to that is that 2020 definitely helped us accelerate our processes for communicating better with the consumer, setting expectations, and being transparent about the current state of the supply chain, because the overall infrastructure and supply chain wasn't really ready for what 2020 brought on to everybody, right? We did experience some of it, but it was really about setting those expectations with the consumer, keeping the line of communication extremely opening, from being super involved on Facebook groups where people were asking about our orders, to like responding to every Facebook comment or YouTube comment, et cetera, and really keeping all of our shipping time on the site updated in real time and communicating throughout every single touch point that we have with the consumer. And I feel like that helped us really get ahead of the disappointment that some consumers had, some of the backlash that some of the brands experienced. And not to say we didn't experience anything, but I feel like because of our approach to handling communication and expectation, it put us in a much better position to deal with it. Now we are in a very good spot and very excited to head into Black Friday, Cyber Monday, as I feel like we will be able to deliver on the expectation that we've set with the consumers.
That's great. I mean, congratulations on that, because not a lot of companies we're reading about have not been able to do that level or get ahead of it that level. Do you think that, are you hearing back from customers to that point that, hey, you're expecting either you're growing your consumer base through people who have already bought from your company because of the level of service, and is this kind of open up a new thinking to how you're going to communicate either with previous customers, lapsed customers, anything along those lines?
I said a little bit of both. I feel like the number one, I feel like the product speaks for itself, and the quality of it, the value proposition that we're trying to show to the consumer in terms of how strongly we believe this product can give you that best sleep for one of our brands, for Nectar, for example, that best sleep at the best value by providing the 365-night trial, the forever warranty. We really think that you can't just sell a mattress, you also have to sell the whole sleep experience. So, giving a gift with purchase with the mattresses, to include a mattress protector, sheets, and pillows, right? That completes the whole experience. So that in itself, I feel like, speaks for itself in terms of getting consumers to buy from us versus a competitor. Yeah. The communication and setting expectation aspect is something that, as we were growing so fast, is something that obviously becomes very hard to get a handle on. But through 2020, we got a lot better, and feel like we're in a place where we almost kind of perfected it and became our second nature. And I think moving forward and beyond, and even talking to previous customers, we have kind of changed the language and how we talk to them and how frequently we talk to them, how frequently we keep them up to date of every part, even those that have purchased, right? In terms of their warranty, any questions that they might have, returns, exchanges, so on and so forth. really being there for the consumer, because at the end of the day, they're the one who are going to improve our product. They're the one that are going to tell us what works, what doesn't work, how should we improve our messaging, how should we change things on the website, so on and so forth. And we do that through passive surveys that we do on previous customers, as well as potential new customers that have come to the site but haven't yet purchased.
Got it. Great. So another thing you brought up piqued my interest, and I just thought of this. So traditionally, mattress has been an in-person purchase, right? You went to the store, you jumped on it. If you brought your kids, you told them not to jump on every one. What was the tipping point for consumers to get over that traditional behavior and be able to buy online and have it delivered home and be comfortable with that? Because we're now seeing that, right? There's so many products that now people used to have to go into a physical store. That's no longer the case. They couldn't for a long time. Your industry specifically is now moving more towards, brands like yourself, where they do their research and you're able to do it, but it's not the same in-store experience.
Yeah, and that's a great question as well. In terms of, I can't speak for all the mattress companies and kind of what changed their behavior for them, but I feel like what helped us start with a D2C first present and then evolve into retail, and I know I might sound like a broken record, really going back to that 365 night trial. When you remove that uncertainty from a product, in that the consumer can feel free to try that product in their comfort of their home, right, through all the seasons of the year, and then decide if they want to keep it or not, I feel like that removes such an amount of pressure from the consumer when making a decision, right? Where if they're looking at one of our competitors that just has 100 nights, right? You can be buying this mattress in the middle of winter, right? Depending on the conditions of your home, memory foam or whatever material can react differently, right? So that's just a very niche example, but that's the things that we communicate with our customers in terms of like why having a year trial is important. And it's something that you're not going to get oftentimes right away from going to a physical store. And not to say that we're not in any physical store. I mean, we're in over 3,000 retail store, and it's one of our growing lines of business that is year over year continues to grow. And we're putting a lot of effort in there. But again, providing the synergy between the two, that even if you're going to a physical store or buy online, you're still going to get a 365 night trial. You're still going to get 300 gift with purchase, which are the pillows, the mattress, protector, and the sheets, and you're still getting your forever warranty. So it's really removing the uncertainty from the whole buying experience, so that the customer can feel free that if they choose not to like this product, then hey, you get your money back. And if the mattress is in good condition, we can provide recommendations as to which charity to donate said mattress. And we've done that a lot of time, continue to do so. We've today donated tens of thousands of mattresses to Salvation Army and many other organizations through the process of, guiding our consumers after they decide, they don't want to keep our product, right? Maybe a different mattress from our portfolio could be better for them. And it's just really having that open dialogue. And I feel like that's kind of what set us apart and caused us to really make consumers feel comfortable with making a purchase like a mattress online.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. That definitely helps, and certainly helps us understand your industry a little bit better. I know we're almost out of time, or we're getting close. I do want to take a turn to next year and beyond. So 2022 and beyond. I'm sure you're already looking 6 months, 8 months, 9 months out, long-term strategy, 5 years plus. What are you most excited about that you're seeing within the industry, and what are you most frustrated with, right? Like, what do you see as working well and you're going to continue on and hope to grow on? And then what do you it sounds like you guys are a very nimble company, and you're pivoting to things that work, and you can shed things quickly that are not. So, I'll leave it at that. Is it data? Is it technology? What part of media, what are you excited about? And what, I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but what are you most annoyed with?
I'll start with the easy one, which is most annoying with. I think the most annoying thing as of right now, and I feel like it's gonna take some time for everybody to get aligned, is right. It's on the unified measurement. That is the one thing that annoys me the most, because if one, the wall gardens and the smaller players, right, don't come together and align on this, it's something that could potentially hurt the industry, right? When CTV first came out, right, that was one of the biggest issues, because the OEMs have their own identifier, SSPs have their own identifier, the app has their own identifier, everybody has their own thing, right? And it made it hard to buy it, really made it hard to like stitch things together, right? And we sometimes overly complicate the idea of being privacy compliant. Privacy compliance, to me personally, boils down to being trustworthy and being transparent with your consumers. And that's how you get them to give you their data, right? And providing a good experience. Simple. It has been so overly complicated by so many big companies out there, not to say any names, that we kind of lost that trust. And that's something that I hope in the next couple of years gets solved sooner. So that's the thing that annoys me the most. In terms of data, definitely excited for some of the things that are going to come out from us continuing to expand into newer channels like streaming, TikTok, and even some of the newer channels that are popping up out of there because of the gaming industry, right? In-game advertising, the whole metaverse experience right there, right? That's going to be another place where there's going to be another TV that a consumer can watch, right? Outside, even though they might be in the living room, they might go into the metaverse to watch a bigger screen because they can, right? People are doing that right now. People are watching live sports through their Oculus and whatnot, right? Like the type of data that you can extract from that is going to be very interesting for me. In terms of technology, shoppable CTV ads is something that I was saying before. I'm excited to work with different partners like Innovators, Roku themselves, et cetera, on these type of format that allows the consumer to now be able to shop directly from the TV. And then from a media perspective is simply, I guess it's both something exciting and also annoying. It's like the transparency aspect of it, particularly with streaming. And right now, and I think I touched on this briefly before, is that transparency to the program level, right? That is available on linear to also be available on connected TV. And it's something that is a bit of an issue in terms of really getting to a contextual targeting point, right? In terms of connected TV, that right now is a little hard unless you really go ahead and do direct buys, let's say with like Hulu or some of the AVOD players out there. But it's something that you cannot do unless you do that, which is quite annoying because it's a more programmatic environment that you technically should be able to do that. But you can because everybody's reselling everything and kind of preventing that transparency. I do love that there's companies like, I think Publica is one of those platforms out there that is trying to work into bringing that transparency. I wish more SSPs will push for that, and the OEMs and the apps and stuff work together to bring that. But I know it's small steps and we should get there soon. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question.